So I am very happy to have back on the show Len Harris. Len had been on maybe a month or two ago talking about their efforts to unionize their store at Starbucks, and they have succeeded. So a humongous congratulations to Len, and thank you for taking the time to come back on.
Thank you so much for having me. Honestly, I wouldn't have been able to do it without my coworkers. So it wasn't just an effort from
Absolutely.
me.
Yeah. I couldn't be more thrilled for you guys. I see this wave happening all over the place. I saw one in Virginia yesterday, also voted to unionize, and it just keeps on rolling. Can you just talk a little bit about what was the process like? How did your coworkers react to the results?
Yeah, so the process of counting, so obviously like I mentioned in the last time that you had me on, the whole gathering people's votes, or signing the petition, making sure a majority signed said petition so that the actual union election could be underway. For a long time, Starbucks pushed against that. So our election date was pushed out for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. We filed to unionize on the 30th of December, which was
Wow.
coincidentally the same as the Marshall Fires. And then we didn't get our union election vote scheduled until the 22nd. This was this past Friday. So it was quite a haul of time before we finally got it. But yeah, ultimately it was just we got our ballots in on like the 4th or 5th of April. They were mailed out at that time. We filled out our ballots, sent it back in, and once they confirmed they had valid ballots, they counted, and we won by 12-2.
That is just fantastic, and a big margin there as well, like all these other stores or most of these other stores. And how did what was the response from the company and from your coworkers? How did everyone feel about how things went?
So my coworkers were thrilled. There was the moment that we hit the magic number, because obviously you don't need like all of the votes to be yes, you just need a majority vote, and our majority vote number was 8. So once we counted 8 yes ballots, we knew we'd won, and so there was a big eruption. We all start laughing and hugging each other. So there was a lot of excitement. um the I know that some management was upset. There was some tears on that side. um
Hmm.
and I never want to hurt people's feelings, but ultimately, I don't think if you knew what was happening, you'd cry about it. So maybe that's a
Hmm.
little cruel of me, but I've done everything to be as educated on my end and educate others as well. So, but
Hmm.
the company is it's putting on this pretense of diplomacy, and I think they'll follow some of it. But ultimately, I know there's going to be a lot of pushback coming.
Have they rhetorically said that they will negotiate in good faith? I mean, what is their overt position?
So they've said that they're going to negotiate in good faith. They've said we will recognize what the partners want and we'll make sure to go from there. They've taken the position of being a diplomatic um,
Hmm.
corporate corporate lead on this. But seeing as multiple stores have reported union busting tactics, the NLRB has already filed multiple suits against Starbucks for union busting. I mean, the amount of time that people have had to wait for their union elections, that's a form of union busting. So it's kind of like, it almost feels like tongue in cheek. I want to believe that they're going to argue in good faith. But seeing as, the first store that won their union election, Buffalo, on the 9th of December last year, and they haven't ratified a contract. They've bargained make twice, but they still don't have a contract ratified yet. It's very clear that they're going to drag their feet. So they might go along with it, but they're going to make it a grueling process, which certainly causes people to peter off, to leave.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a more perfect union clip that was going over. They couldn't even list all the places that had filed with the NLRB. I mean, they were trying to go around the country, and they basically said from Buffalo to Seattle and everywhere in between, you've had
Yeah.
illegal, union busting and files made with the NLRB. So what kind of things do you and your coworkers see in this that will like what's going to improve? Can you just talk to people who might not actually understand what the benefit of a union is? What's like what about your lives and your work lives are going to improve here with this union?
So, first of all, we have legal representation for our work. So instead of just, having to go to your boss and say, like, hey, so I think I deserve a raise, and then saying, maybe you do, maybe you don't, you literally have legal representation to be like, okay, well, I have someone to fight for me to do this. There's also, there's this fear that people have, and I mean, it's been you've seen it across the country where people are being fired indiscriminately for justifiable claims from the company, but the NLRB has already issued multiple suits against Starbucks to say, nope, you did not fire this person lawfully. It's for union busting. So that's a big part of it too. So, this fear of being let go for some small thing, that is no longer, that's something that we want to implement, is due cause firing. They argue that, oh, well, bad workers will be able to stay on. Like,
No.
that may be a small percentage, but currently we already have people in the company that probably would be better off elsewhere, and yet the management isn't doing anything about it. Frankly, at my store, they're browbeating the best workers so that they're leaving, and the ones that maybe aren't as adequate aren't getting any sort of talking to. So another thing that we want to focus on, of course, is wage increases. By and large, the majority of people in unions across the country are paid a lot more than their non-union partners. So wage increase is a big thing. Of course, we want to see expansions to some benefits like mental health days. You talk about sick days. There's plenty of, I think, if people were being honest with themselves, there are days when you wake up and you may be physically like, you don't feel nauseated, you don't feel like you have a cold or a fever, but you're like, I emotionally cannot fathom going to work right now. I'm beside myself, I'm besotted, kind of thing. Your mind is most of your body. A lot of people, mental health isn't taken nearly as seriously as it should be. So mental health days, we want to see compensation for short staffing. So if 6 people are supposed to work and 4 people show up, currently those 2 people's wages get reabsorbed into the company. We want to see those go back to the workers who now have to work for 6 people and there's only 4 of them. We want to see tip increases. The way that we're tipped is really bottlenecked and really there's a chokehold on our tipping. So we want to see that improved. We'd like to see, a rise in our wages, similar, if not equal to the consumer price index every year. So there's a lot of things that we are arguing for that will ultimately give us better staffing, better wages, better benefits, and just a better overall working condition.
The hours one really stands out to me because that's been a huge tactic of Starbucks, and I think we talked about this last time as well, that they will take workers who might be involved with or supportive of the union and cut their hours down. And another way that this tactic works is what you were just talking about. If you're suddenly leaving everybody short-staffed for most of their shifts, that's frustrating, and people might no longer want to work there, right? So that is a really, really huge one, and that's a tactic that Starbucks has used. So I hope that can be sort of cut into there. I want to get your thoughts on, last time it was Kevin Johnson that we were talking about. They decided to get rid of Kevin Johnson because he was not successful enough union busting. That little bit is my opinion, but it seems pretty obvious that's exactly why he was given the boot. And they bring back Howard Schultz, who is a known union buster, notorious union buster. I was just curious, what are your thoughts on him calling you his so-called workers? I don't know if you saw that quote, but that's what he thinks of you all the partners, is that you are so-called workers. I'm curious if you could respond to that.
Yeah. I've always tried to take a diplomatic approach because I want to believe in genuine diplomacy. So it's not like I think he's some evil plotting little villain in his office, like, this is going to get him. Maybe he is, I'm not going to perpetuate that idea. It's insulting. I frankly think his perspective is short-sighted. It's narrow. It's older. I don't, having an older perspective isn't inherently bad, but having a vicious affront to new perspective is bad. And I think there's a manner of purposeful or not purposeful. I would hope it's not purposeful. I have the inclination that it is, disconnect between the reality that if he leaves, anybody could come in and just be like, okay, we're going to change this, this, and this. Like, all these worker benefits that were instated to stop people from unionizing, they're not profitable. He canceled the stock buyback program to reinvest
Yeah.
into workers. That's great. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but who's
Right.
to say the next person won't come in and be like, okay, let's reinstate this. I mean, you see it everywhere. People will
Yeah.
perform, they'll do, virtue signaling and performative activism. I know Toyota just did this where they stopped donating or stopped receiving donations from controversial figures about the January 6th insurrection
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
or the attempted coup, and now they're accepting those donations again. So I would just want to say to him, there is nothing monumentally crazy about wanting to have my work legally protected no matter who is in charge. It is nothing against him. It is about protecting me and my coworkers. And
Hmm.
if he's the visionary that so many people think of him to be, of a progressive company, he wouldn't be opposed to this, is my opinion on it. So
Well, I think what's so ironic there, it's a great point, because I think it's like a lot of these guys who are executives at these companies that are doing the union busting, it's like I guarantee you, if you put them as a barista in a store, they'd be the first ones to bitch and moan about the work conditions and the compensation, and they'd be the first ones to be like, oh my God, we need to unionize. This is awful.
facts.
So it's so ironic. Like, they get to go and negotiate multi-million-dollar contracts and multi-million-dollar golden parachutes to go from this company to that company, and they're sitting here, cracking down on people who are making barely minimum wage in a lot of cases to do the work that actually keeps the company afloat. Another portion of his messaging that I thought was very interesting is he keeps using this term. He did a meeting with managers, and some of this was leaked, and he keeps using this term outside force to describe the union. There's this outside force that wants to take over our company and take our workers, and and it just seems to me like, no, this is as inside a source as you can possibly get. This is like your company is making these moves. So can you talk a little bit about that mentality that he has towards his employees?
I think he kind of, it's not just him, it's many people, but I think the perception of unionizing comes from like, I kind of compare it to you smelt it, you dealt it. It's like,
Hmm.
just because you're trying to impose as a force unto its workers an ideal that isn't working for us. We've already come back to say these working conditions aren't workable. We need
Yeah.
change. And you're coming in and saying, no, like obviously you're one company, so they don't think of it that way. Um, Unions have always helped other unions become established, but who is embodying the Starbucks union are Starbucks workers. They're literally us. I mean, I'm the lead of this organization. Of course, I didn't do this by myself. This was made possible by my coworkers. But I've been with the company since 2016. Are you saying that I'm not am I an outside
Right.
force? I don't understand. So
Right.
it's just kind of like, I almost want to play stupid, but it's like, just because you're accusing a group of trying to manipulate us into conditions that aren't favorable for us, like that's what you think. Like, it's funny that you're accusing the unions of doing that when not only is it not true, it's like, would you not say that's kind of what you're doing, especially with the union busting? Like, so anyway, it's ironic. It's funny. If it would be more funny if it wasn't so sad.
Hmm.
It just goes to show that they have a very meek and narrow and uninformed perspective about what's actually happening. And like I said, I hope it's not purposeful, but I feel like it is.
Yeah, it's how can you be doing captive audience meetings while you're also accusing the workers of being some sort of outside messaging force? It's like, who's doing those meetings? Isn't it a bunch of PR people that you just hired from the outside to come in and bust the union? I mean, it's
Yeah.
really kind of, you can't make it up. Yeah. So I wanted to ask for viewers at home who might either be in a workplace that is not unionized but maybe should be unionized, or for workers at home who want to support somehow in their community, what would your advice be for people who want to get engaged in the labor movement and want to help keep this snowball rolling?
Honestly, education is going to be your biggest friend here. I mean, education in general is just good, and regardless, like trying to get an unbiased source to inform you is going to be a really powerful position. Because of course, when I first started, I grew up in a Republican, conservative, Catholic family.
Hmm.
I'm not affiliated with really that sort of like those bullet points really much anymore. Obviously,
Hmm.
I still love my family, but so my perspective was very not what it is now. And it takes a lot of discomfort to kind of take yourself out of your comfort zone and say, okay, what's everyone saying about this? What are the pros and cons of a union? So if you can really extricate yourself from your comfort zone, and frankly, that's just the best way to educate yourself anyway. Once you kind of let your ego die down, learning a bunch of things and perceiving them is much easier. So just take that time to educate yourself. And then honestly, just same situation. If you don't know what next steps you should take, look it up, ask people. Like, hey, I know that Starbucks Workers United is a huge unionizing movement right now with Starbucks workers. Send them a message. Say like, hey, how do I do this? What do I like? Send me a message. Send a bunch of people. Like you eventually will get through to people. And it's all community based. You know, if you're wondering, how do I support these people? If you support them, be vocal about it. Like at Starbucks, I've coworkers, or rather customers, I should say, will come in and say like, hey, I support you and your unionizing efforts. What should I do? I'm like, don't whisper. You don't have to, you can be loud and proud about it. But that's the interesting thing about society is they don't want us to be. It's so much easier to control and mitigate where people go and what they think when they're uneducated and when they're convinced that they are stronger, not as a collective, but as an individual. You know, meritocracy, individualism, it's been pushed through and through and through, and it's never the case. No one has ever made it on their own, ever.
That's
not the richest man you know never made it on their own.
100%. Jeff Bezos did not produce billions and billions of dollars. His workers did. It's very, very simple. He took the excess value from their work, and absolutely the case. And it's funny you mentioned that the whispering thing, because I've on occasion I've gone into Starbucks since this whole thing has been going on, and I'll just say something like, you know, the community supports you guys if you want to unionize, and leave it at that. Just vocalize my support, whatever. And I've gotten a very different range of responses, right? Some people are like very like, oh, that's so sweet, thank you, and you can tell it's actually like it's helpful. And then with some people, they look around like I just said Lord Voldemort or something, like, where's the manager? I got to make sure, you know. So it is kind of funny to see, but I think vocalizing that support even from customers is good. And if you're in a workplace, like Len said, look into those who have had success here and figure out how you can get the ball rolling on organizing yourself. How do you see this movement impacting? You know, I'm not sure what things are like in Colorado, but it seems like this is across industries and kind of hitting across regions. And how do you see all of this success impacting the labor movement more broadly?
Ultimately, we've already been seeing this kind of immense exponential growth of people starting to unionize and organize and just get involved with activism. And I think, you know, it's kind of a long time coming. I want to say maybe that's a little optimistic to say, but actual activism as opposed to just like tweeting something and, you know, we're starting to see that because we're starting to see, oh, I don't have to have all my shit together, so to speak, in order to make change. So I can only see it making a further positive impact with the labor movement. I mean, we already have, I think it's 5 or 6 Colorado Starbucks elections coming up here in the next couple weeks. So I was the first one, but there are many more to follow. I was keeping up with how many stores have filed. You know, you think of Buffalo when they won their union election on the 9th of December last year. At that time, only a handful of stores had filed. Like my store, when we filed on the 30th of December, we were store number 11. It might be 12, but I'm pretty sure. And that's like across the country. We were store number 11 across the country. And now April 25th, is today the 25th? It is the 25th. Yes. April 25th, there's over 250 stores that have filed. So that's a huge growth in the last just like 4 months. So I can only see it as a domino effect. You know, that's been something that's been trending on Twitter is dominoes, make them fall like dominoes. So that's what I can see it as. That's how I see it. It's going to be a domino effect.
Well, and in this case, like I think even if what's amazing to me is how few losses I've seen. I mean, I think I've only seen a couple few losses, and almost all of them have been wins. And in this particular, like it's the case that it would be a loss for Starbucks even if they were winning the vast majority of these votes, right? Like even one can get the ball rolling. So I think the fact that it has been so successful and so overwhelmingly, I'm seeing not just yes votes, but it's like it's often numbers like you described, one or two no votes, and that's it, and it's not even close. I think that sort of speaks to the mood of the country right now, and we haven't seen a labor movement in, I mean, basically half a century. We haven't seen any real push for labor. So I'm very encouraged by this. I think it gives me a lot of hope, right? As we go into the Amazon thing, the Warrior Met Coal strike, the animators, all the Google workers, it
There's
just goes
so
on and on and on.
much.
Isn't it crazy? Like it's really
incredible.
encouraging to see. Yeah. So I really appreciate you taking the time, Len, and I hope we can catch up again soon about this. And I just want to
Yes,
give you a humongous congratulations and pass that on to your colleagues, please.
absolutely.
And just on a closing note, if you can just kind of reiterate to the audience what can they do in their communities to be supportive here? You said voice your support. What kind of like actions were you guys engaged in that the community could have been involved in?
Honestly, pay attention to what stores might be walking out or doing strikes. Having that kind of, those kinds of bodies picketing is always great. That's not always going to happen, however. So honestly, just encouraging people to be communicative. At Starbucks, like I'd said before, we had people ordering coffee saying Union Strong or anything of that caliber, just making it known that they're not alone. They're not fighting alone. And the stronger the community, the easier it's going to be to feel like your voice matters, which is funny. They try to say like, oh, your voice is going to be buried in the sea of voice. It's like, no. That's not how that works. Like once you're stronger together, you're always stronger together. So honestly, just take the time to pay attention. Search on Facebook, some Facebook groups. Like I have one Facebook group I belong to that's the city that I belong to. So everybody in the city or people who live in the city belong to this Facebook group. So I post on that Facebook group, hey, we just unionized, come support us. And most of the responses are like, oh my God, congratulations, I'm going to come right now, kind of thing. So just honestly, it's just taking the time to do a little searching. Like, let's look around, see what people are doing, support whatever they're doing. Assume good intent as well too. I think just having a general love and respect for your community, it's going to be a lot easier to see where people need that support and how to do it.
Yeah, and I really do think it's important to vocalize that support, because I think that in many cases, and I think this is one of them, I think the majority of our society supports workers and labor efforts and unions. And yet, if everybody's quiet about it, how is a worker supposed to know that when they're going up against this, Goliath of a corporation that they're trying to stand up against, So, and in fact, Kim Kelly has been covering the Warrior Met Coal thing quite a bit, and she said you'd be surprised how much it means just to bring these guys a cup of coffee while they're on the line striking. You know what I mean? Like, just stuff like that. Like, here, the community supports you. We really do. That kind of thing really does mean the world to workers who are trying to, it's terrifying to stand up against a corporation like Starbucks or Warrior Met Coal or what have you. So thank you so much for taking the time, Len. We really appreciate it. And I'm thrilled. A huge congratulations again. I hope we can talk again soon.
Thank you so much. Honestly, it was a pleasure. I would look forward to talking again soon, and just keep up that solidarity. It's what's going to make the difference.
Absolutely.